Hi guys! Today we'll be recapping a story called I Tamed the Male Lead That Tried to Kill Me. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Enjoy! Before a mob of angry people, a little girl cowers as she listens to them call for her death, naming her as a villain and a wicked witch. Latia Gladalice can't believe that she, the eldest daughter of House Gladalice, is being treated this way. Her whole family is being persecuted, all because of one man, Duke Claude L'Homme-de-Sel. 3 years ago, L'Homme-de-Sel was just a lowly house of a count. When he took a sea route to avoid bankruptcy, he left his son to his friend Latia's father. Her entire family mistreated his son, thinking that the count would definitely die at sea. Unfortunately, one of the main instigators of Karshian's torment is her. Latia made fun of him and reminded him of his place. No wonder people hated this family. Just how evil can you be to mistreat a child? Unfortunately for House Gladalice, Count Claude L'Homme-de-Sel did come back, and for opening the world's first maritime trade route, he was granted the title of Duke. Naturally, he did not react well once he knew that his son was being bullied by the people he trusted, which led to the present. As her whole family awaits execution, the crowd continues to whisper about House Gladalice's other misdeeds, including running an illegal fight house and selling slaves. How despicable! Latia desperately turns to her mother, but she learns that her family also wants to blame everything, including Karshian's abuse, entirely on her. Latia is literally 10 years old. What is wrong with these people? To make matters worse, it is revealed that she is an illegitimate child born from a maid. This is probably the worst time to find out something so life-altering, considering that they're literally about to lose their heads. Her family proceeds to blame her for her misfortunes, even as she argues that she was merely doing those things so they would appreciate her. All she wants is to be loved by them. Nonetheless, Latia is the first to be punished. As her head is forcibly lowered to await the swing of the sword, all she can think of is how everything she believes in is a lie. Her life then flashes before her eyes. But to her shock, the images do not stop at her memories alone. It includes the memory of an unfamiliar woman in an entirely different world. This woman is reading a book that seems to include her name. That is when she realizes that she is reincarnated and she is witnessing her past life. Nonetheless, she thinks that it is useless that she remembers this now that she's about to lose her life anyway. Just before the sword comes down, she catches a glimpse of Karshian with his father. She regrets tormenting him just to get attention. She wonders if she would have not died if someone just told her back then that her actions were wrong. When she comes back to herself, she is surprised to be standing face to face with a much younger Karshian. It seems that she had just slapped him in the face. Susan, her old nanny, is begging her to stop her tormenting the boy. She remembers all of these happening before, even the way she broke her poor nanny's heart by calling her a lowly nanny and not running away with her. This can only mean that Latia has gone back to the past. Latia quickly goes to the mirror, only to be shocked to see a younger version of herself. When Susan calls out to her, she remembers that she was kicked out of the house because she is the only one who tried to protect Karshian from abuse. Since Susan is still in the house, this means that this moment is at least 3 years before her death. Armed with the knowledge that she has read this novel in her previous life, she will use this opportunity to stay alive. She turns back to Karshian, only to see him trying to sneak out of the room. She stops him, wanting to apologize before anything else. When she tries to reach out to him, he slaps her hand away, venomously telling her not to touch him. Latia bows her head, sincerely asking for his forgiveness. Naturally, Karshian is confused. This is understandable because just moments ago, she literally slapped the bejesus out of him. She explains that she thought her actions were right, but now she understands that she was being stupid. Realizing that his face is bruised because of her, she grabs his cheeks to check on him. She even asks Susan to get some ointment for him. Suddenly, she sees Betty, a maid who was close to her in the past. However, she was someone she got close to because they harassed Karshian together. Ugh, how awful is it that they formed a friendship because of their sinister deed? At first, she is glad to see her, but then the maid proclaims that she is acting like an idiot for wanting to give some ointment to a good-for-nothing parasite like Karshian. Latia remembers that Betty used to use abusive language towards her even when they were close. She understands now that Betty has always been aware that she's an illegitimate child. That means that almost everyone in House Gladalice knows this fact. All this time, she had been a nobody. However, Latia is determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past. She needs to start by proving to Karshian that she is on his side. Facing Betty, Latia calls the maid insolent for thinking she knows more than the eldest daughter of House Gladalice. She threatens that she has the power to feed her to wild dogs if she doesn't behave. Proving just how audacious she is, Betty mocks her so-called power, so Latia reminds her that she has jewels that she can use to pay people to get rid of a mere maid. She claims that if she wants to live longer, she better watch what she says. Easily enough, Betty flops to the floor, and Latia tells her that she must stay in that position every time she sees her from now on, declaring the position as her rightful one. Once Betty leaves, Latia tries to give Karshian the ointment for his face, but the boy only questions her intention, thinking that she's plotting against him. But Latia vows that she will stop harassing him from now on. However, Karshian, with an expression full of contempt, questions why she thinks he would ever believe her. Sorry, MC, but bullying can't easily be forgiven. When Karshian attempts to leave again, Latia begs him to believe her. She discloses that she mistreated him so that her family would love her. But now she knows, just as Susan said, the love she got for her attitude towards him wasn't true love. She asks him to take the ointment, but he hatefully tells her that he doesn't care what she has to say. Even if she begs on her knees, he will never use that ointment. He then slams the door when he leaves the room, leaving a distraught Latia behind. Later on, the Marchioness proclaims that she is growing plump, so they won't get any food for the day. She remembers how this is the way she used to be punished in the past, and since Betty is basically her mother's right hand, the maid has probably told her that she took Karshian's side earlier. How can these people stomach not feeding a child? Withholding food from children as punishment is just plain evil. Latia even remembers how her mother begrudged everything that she gave her. She only ever gave expensive jewelry and dresses to her sister Elaine. She can't believe that she was that stupid when her mother was so obvious in her favoritism. All she can do now is win Karshian's trust, but first, she has to survive this house. A beaming Susan then enters her room carrying a tray of food. The head chef has given her their supper. Susan knows that Latia has been starving. Latia is touched by how caring Susan is, especially since the woman hasn't had anything to eat the whole day as well. Latia breaks the bread in two so they can share. Seeing her lady's action, the nanny is close to tears, claiming that the child truly has a kind nature. When Susan mentions that there was an order that Karshian should starve as well, Latia is horrified. Turns out, Karshian is being punished because Latia did not torment him earlier. Even though she did not bully him earlier, she still managed to abuse him indirectly. Latia can only grit her teeth in anger at their situation. She then decides to bring the food to him, wanting to share it with him. Susan is incredibly happy to see the little lady being kind to Karshian. Latia even remembers to take the ointment for Karshian's face with them. Even though the two have to sneak around to not get caught, they still persist in reaching Karshian's room in the basement. Latia knocks at his door, making it known that it is her who comes to visit, but the only response she receives is him telling her to get lost. Earlier, Karshian is in bed having a nightmare. He sees Marquess Albus telling him that his father is dead, telling him to work at the stables for he's no longer a lord. He tries to tune out his words, for he knows that the man is wrong. His father is alive, and he will come back for him. Suddenly, his nightmare shifts into a dream, a memory of his father handing him a piece of stationery paper enchanted to allow them to communicate with each other. He reminded him that even though they are far apart, they are always close at heart. When his father turns away to leave, he begs him not to. This poor child. My heart aches for our little Karshian. He wakes with a jolt, desperately calling out to his father. He hasn't heard from his father in the last 3 months. He refuses to believe that he is gone. The very thought of it makes his heart ache. Poor Karshian tries to convince himself that his father is safe, even with tears running down his cheeks. Suddenly, he remembers what Latia had said earlier. She claims that she will stop tormenting him. He considers what she said as nonsense, but he is also aware of the way the people in House Gladelice are treating her. Once, he overheard Latia crying and telling her mother how the servants were rude to her, even leaving pins stuck to her dress. Karshian knew that it was the Marchioness herself who gave the maids orders to torment Latia. The Marchioness then manipulated little Latia to take out her anger on someone else, specifically on Karshian. She even spouted nonsense that Latia would become an adult if she expressed her anger properly. Latia, wanting to make her mother happy, promised to do as she says. My God, these people! How could they be cruel to children like this? There is no logic for their horrid actions whatsoever. Karshian deems Latia as a mere puppet who hungers for praise, but the Latia he faced earlier was entirely different. However, he knows that she hasn't changed at all, for it was she who ordered that he would not be fed today. She is once again showing her true colors. But then Latia comes knocking at his door. Not trusting her one bit, he tells her to get lost. She claims to bring him food, but this only angers him more. He opens the door with a bang and shouts at her for being the cause of his starvation in the first place. Latia frantically explains that it was a misunderstanding and that this is her mother's way of punishing them both. Karshian is thoroughly confused and does not react instantly when Latia and Susan offer him the tray. But then he is forced to let them in quickly when they hear some people coming their way. When Latia hesitates, he grabs her hand and pulls her into his room. His actions cause the two of them to stand incredibly close to one another. The two stare at one another for a moment before they quickly turn away from the awkward position. Latia then looks around Karshian's room, and she is in disbelief that they let a 10-year-old live in such a place. She once again comes to terms with just how terrifyingly cruel her family is. You and me both, Latia. Abusing children is up there when it comes to the most heinous crimes ever. But she knows that House Gladelice will pay for this with their necks. Unfortunately, Latia is devastated that she'll likely join them. As she tries to come up with a way to help Karshian despite her limited power, she catches sight of a parchment called the Paper of Seirin. But Karshian quickly blocks her view, angrily telling her not to touch it. Latia instantly shrinks away from the boy's anger. However, she knows that from the novel that the paper is a gift from Claude L'Homme de Sel. She lets it slip that she knows what the paper can do, which only makes Karshian suspicious of her even more. Realizing her mistake, she lies that she saw it in a catalog once. Thankfully, the boy believes her. He then complains that he hasn't received a single reply for the last few months. He even suspects that someone has been pocketing his messages before they can reach him. However, she explains that the reason for this is because the magic potion used in the paper loses its effect when it is stored in a damp place, such as the room in the basement Karshian is currently in. Latia then has the brilliant idea of how to gain the boy's favor. She knows how to help him. After all, her room gets sunlight which can easily dry off the paper, so they can reapply the magic potion. A potion that her father happens to store in his study. Naturally, Karshian isn't keen to trust her no matter what she says. Latia, not wanting to upset him even further, decides to stop bothering him for now. She gives him the ointment before she and Susan take their leave. However, Latia is convinced that Karshian will soon come to see her. But it has already been a week since they last spoke, and still he does not come to her. Latia tries to be positive, thinking that Karshian will definitely come. She looks outside and sees a couple of birds on a tree branch. They remind her of the injured bird she once found in the garden. She tried to heal it, but the bird never opened up to her. She asks Susan why the baby bird didn't trust her, and Susan explained that everybody needed to adjust to things at their own pace. She advised her to approach them very slowly and not to rush them. Now, she has come to realize that Karshian is similar to the little bird. He learns to trust people at his own pace. Hearing her say this makes Susan so happy that her little lady is so mature. The two of them go out to the garden for a change to try and look for the little bird they once took care of. However, after some time, they fail to locate it. Susan speculates that the bird has moved somewhere far away. Latia only hopes that it does not get hurt again. Susan calls her mysterious for acting all mature sometimes. Latia knows that she can't tell people that she's come back to the past and has memories of her previous life. She intends to live a peaceful life after all. Smiling brightly, she claims that she's become mature enough to take some burden off Susan's shoulders. Susan is so touched that she starts sniffling. However, the moment is cut off when they hear a commotion. Latia quickly goes to investigate. She arrives at the scene to see two boys claiming that Karshian insists that he deliberately injured himself so he can blame him for it. Bill, the injured boy, mocks his claim and starts shouting that Karshian is telling a big fat lie. Latia grits her teeth in anger, for she knows that Bill and Ron always injure themselves and blame it on Karshian. One of them is even wearing a magic recording device to humiliate Karshian as they dare him to drink the so-called water of reconciliation so they don't tell the Marquise. The water is actually just the water used to clean the mops. Ugh! These people are too much. I hope karma works faster so they get what they deserve. Latia leaves her hiding place and confronts them head on. The two don't take her seriously, telling her to walk away. One of them even let it slip that they addressed her as an illegitimate child all this time. No one to back down. Latia claims that she believes Karshian's words, and since her father took him in, that means that her father trusts Count L'Homme de Sel. She menacingly implies that the two servant boys are implying that her father is an idiot. But the two continue to argue with her, even pointing out that the rake that Karshian is holding has a piece of fabric attached to it from when he supposedly hit Bill. Karshian defends himself, revealing that it was them who forced him to take the rake. Seeing as there is no reasoning with these people, she takes a water bucket herself and bravely drinks it up. The people around her freeze after witnessing her bold act. She just drank up a whole bucket of dirty water. This little girl has guts, I'll give her that. Latia quickly snatches the recording device around Bill's neck and speculates that the two have stolen it from her father. The bullies instantly grapple for an explanation, trying to pass everything off as a misunderstanding. With a rather evil look, she taunts the two with the idea of going to her father to clarify the whole thing. She even threatens to show others the recordings of them harassing the son of Count Lomdecel and making her, the eldest daughter of House Gladelice, drink wastewater. Knowing that the Marquise won't take it lightly when the family's reputation is at stake, the two servants get down on their knees to apologize to her and Karshian. Latia knows exactly how to get them back for their actions. With a deceptively happy smile on her face, she tells them to drink a bucket of wastewater themselves. With the threat of ratting them out to her father, the two have no choice but to obey, lest they suffer even more consequences. Yuck! Take that, bullies! Hope you learned your lesson! When they're finished, she makes it known that if any of the servants ever harass Karshian again, she won't let them get away with it. The two scramble away fearfully when she dismisses them. With them gone, Susan begins admonishing her for drinking water that can make her sick. The nanny ever so quickly drags her to make her drink some medicine, even as she struggles, wanting to speak with Karshian first. But the boy has already turned away from them without giving her a chance to speak to him. After drinking 5 cups of water, taking medicine, and a round of lecturing from Susan, Latia is finally allowed to rest. She is happy to have someone who takes care of her. She then recalls how she asked Susan to return her father's magic device, along with a letter revealing that someone is disclosing household matters to others, which is making their family look bad. It's a lie, of course, but she knows her father enough that it'll make him nervous. After all, the man is obsessed with keeping the gentle and proper image of the household. Because of this, he gave her a necklace, thinking that she was looking out for the family. But this is the first time she has ever owned something, so it's a new feeling for her. But she knows that she should be more careful too, now that she has her father's attention. Later on, while they are in the garden, she and Susan hear a commotion outside. The guards are harshly turning away a man who wants to show the Marquis some medicinal herbs. He is even harshly pushed away, causing him to crash to the ground along with the herbs he is carrying. Poor man! No need to be so harsh, jeez! The man then reveals that he is from the Gruon Trading Company, but the guards do not believe him. However, this fact managed to grab Latia's attention. Upon careful deliberation, Latia manages to recognize the man who got turned away by the guards at the gate. Just by hearing the name of the Gruon Trading Company, Latia deduces that the man mistaken as a peddler was actually Celtron, the head of the aforementioned trading company. According to the novel from her previous life, Celtron is very skilled at raising plants, being referred to as having a green thumb because of his ability. Actually, it's not because he's very fond of plants, which, based on his appearance, he really is. But more so from the fact that he's a descendant of a race known as Druids. He still has not figured out his lineage though, but nonetheless, his company has become famous due to its production of high-quality medicinal herbs. Unfortunately, Latia also remembers that the initial reason for the Gruon Trading Company's downfall is caused by none other than her father, Marquis Gladelice. Now, that makes for a very awkward conversation now, doesn't it? It seems that her father has essentially forced Celtron into a business that made him sell his products and supplies for an unreasonably low price. Along with that, he also stole all the procedures for cultivating said herbs. And so Celtron's business got run to the ground because of the Gladelice family decided to rival their business, eventually eclipsing the cheaper and the more quantity medical herbs of the Gruon Trading Company. Ugh, what a truly despicable man that Marquis Gladelice! After a while, Susan breaks Latia's thinking by mentioning how Celtron is trying to earn for his sick little sister, and Latia unintentionally lets it out that in the future, Celtron's company will become successful again. But after that blunder, she thinks about how she finally has a way to secure her future once the inevitable fall of her family comes. And so she rushes out of the gates to speak with Celtron, who is genuinely amazed at how well-mannered the child is when greeting him, and by her invitation to discuss his medicinal herb catalog inside the estate. She then gives her family guards a hard time by trying to hinder his entrance into the mansion. Truly an adult in a child's body there, Latia. Well, in a way it actually is. Anyhow, once inside and having a cup of tea between the two of them, Latia decides to not beat around the bush, and she reveals that she invited him in order to ask him if he will hire her as an employee of his company. Of course, this comes as a shock to the man, who, as well as having an issue with money, cannot just hire a child. Even Latia could sense that he was treating her as a kid, which she still is. Celtron still refuses when Latia tries to convince him, ending with him asking why she would help him. That's when Latia suddenly reveals that she knows she's an illegitimate child, and that alone is enough to reason for her to help him. She still sweetens the pot, saying that she plans to assist her father in running his trading company, so she could help Celtron in more ways than one. Latia even reveals that she knows a way to revitalize his business, but she's actually referring to Karshian, who after getting his revenge, went with his father on a trading route. Amazingly, he comes back after saving the princess of a dying kingdom, the eventual female lead of the novel of their lives, Eris. According to the original novel where their lives are now based, it seems that Eris, the female lead of the novel, had experienced so much heartbreak when her kingdom fell that she suffered homesickness. Karshian, the fair gentleman hoping to comfort her, eventually found seedlings of a flower native to Eris's kingdom. However, he had no success in making them sprout, making him think about the Gruon Trading Company and their prowess at plant growing. By the time Karshian had reached out to Celtron, the latter's sister had already died. After paying for the wedding himself, he and Celtron managed to bond over their hate of the Gladelice family. Furthermore, business boomed when Celtron's druid heritage came to light. As per Latia, the story eventually goes in a cliché way, with Karshian and Eris ending up together in love. Regardless, Latia plans to do what Karshian did for Celtron in the future herself, ensuring a way for her to live. With that in mind, Latia brings out the necklace that was a recent gift from her father and proceeds to buy everything Celtron had with him at the moment. The gem in her necklace, which is a bi-color amethyst, is pretty expensive. At least right now, when her father still hasn't put it up to business. The money shocks Celtron, but he also starts to get teary-eyed when Latia makes him realize that it will provide for his sick sister better. Oh, what a sweet big brother that's Celtron! The tradesman then bids his farewell, though not before agreeing to consider Latia's offer. Immediately after he leaves, Susan also says that she made the right choice by doing so, and promptly declares that she will stay by her lady's side forever. I think we have an early candidate for the best girl, and it's Susan. Meanwhile, right as the two are talking about how Latia plans to help Karshian find other ways to reach his dad, the boy accidentally overheard them through an open door. Talk about a speak of the devil kind of event. Anyway, this leads the boy to have thoughts about how nice Latia actually is, and so he admits to himself that he now has no reason to deny Latia's kindness anymore. And later that night, a random knock echoes from Latia's door, making her wonder who it might be at this late hour. It is indeed Karshian who knocked on Latia's door that night, and now the two sit facing each other with an air of awkwardness lingering between them. At least, despite the silence, Latia's still happy to see him. And the reason for that being that finally Karshian decides to see her. The boy reaches over and places one sheet of the paper of Seirin to start. But it seems that Latia expected this, and she smiles as she says it must be Karshian trying to test her. He pouts and mumbles about how it wouldn't matter if she knew it was a test, which makes Latia giggle and think, despite the fact that he is a male lead of the story there, he's still a child. You're still one yourself though, Latia. Anyhow, it seems that Latia has a knack for guessing what Karshian thinks, or even just the way he facially expresses his emotions, and she muses that she can practically read his thoughts. But come to think of it, even though she recognizes that Karshian's face makes him easy to read, she starts to think about a lot of instances in which she essentially figured out what the adults were thinking. The coincidences were, most recently, when she talked to Celtron, and then with Betty, and even those servants who attacked Karshian previously. Latia starts thinking that something's really strange. Also, coincidentally, the book even describes her as quick-witted. Can she truly read minds? That'd be so cool and an incredibly useful skill. She gets snapped back to the present by Karshian, who again, Latia manages to read his thoughts about backing out when he sees how weird she's getting. He didn't though, and instead asks why Latia decided to help the head of the Gruon Trading Company. Latia replies with the most genuine smile that she helped him because she wanted to help him get out of the poor situation he was in. Karshian, considering her genuineness, mumbles that she truly has changed and mentions something about people changing on the verge of death. A sensitive topic for Latia for sure, but she actually admits to it, making Karshian leave immediately thinking that she is in fact dying. Ugh, a whole case of misunderstanding. Meanwhile, later on during the day, Latia begins her plan to help Celtron realize his true lineage. First, she brought a very sensitive plant on the verge of death. A fluffy herb, to be precise, and she had Celtron bring a copy of the names of all the previous heads of their company with him. By comparing the names of Celtron's list and a book about druids, they were able to find that the last generation of druids matches that of the ancestor of a Celtron. The idea begins to dawn on Celtron himself, and so he decides to give trying to revitalize the almost dead plant a try. Meanwhile, somewhere in the house, Betty finds herself in the presence of Lady Gladelice. It seems the latter is not happy with not being made aware of the fact that Latia met with the head of the Gruon trading company. So much so that when Betty tries to find an excuse, the lady of the house grabs her by the face. The Lady Gladelice continues her raging assault on Betty. She angrily declares how she's the second command when it comes to the hierarchy of the house, and she will not have information kept from her as long as 10 days. Oh, she's definitely angry. She cuts her attack on Betty short, saying that she hopes the maid will not make another mistake like that again. Understandably, Betty storms off with a very hot head after the sudden confrontation. She even seems to question the lady supposedly being second in command. Soon enough, Betty passes through Marquise Gladelice's door and she knocks on it immediately. The only thought in her mind is the confidence that her lady would apparently not be second in command any longer. Oh my god, does she have what I think she does with the Marquise? Meanwhile, the lady herself had gone about her usual day after the confrontation with Betty. Currently, she's being pampered by a maid after her bath as the maid attends to her nails. The maid suddenly questions why the lady lets Betty be like that around her, to which the lady nonchalantly affirms that Betty herself can do nothing to harm her. But as soon as her other maid starts to mention the rumored affair between Betty and her husband, she's quick to shoot it down. But besides, she's confident that Betty's low birth is of no consequence to her anyway. She may act nonchalantly, but she was threatened enough to demote Betty to being Latia's maid. Meanwhile, Latia is bursting with happiness now that the paper of Seirin with Karshian's message has dried. Unfortunately, the problem now lies with acquiring the magic potion to send it, which can only be found in her father's study. You probably won't want to go there now that Betty's there. Just saying. She still asks Susan for the best way to sneak into her father's study without getting caught. But even she affirms that entry will not be possible, as there are numerous magic spells against that. And Latia seems to know the reason behind it too. Her father apparently keeps documents about the weaknesses of each and every aristocrat, acquired by all of them being fooled by the gentle image of the Gladelice family. What a truly despicable person. Latia and Susan just about finish agreeing that sneaking into her father's study is a bad idea when Celtron arrived at their gates, clutching what seems to be a potted plant. He brings news that he did, in fact, successfully brought the fluffy herb back to life, and is overjoyed by the fact that his druid heritage is proven true. Not because of the fame that it will bring, but because he now realized, as Latia intends, that he has a way of bringing his business back to life. But more than that, Celtron reveals that he is there to give a gift to Latia as thanks, though he admittedly doesn't know what it is. Latia actually manages to read his mind again on this matter, which is nothing short of cool. Anyhow, Celtron's determination is fueled because he has recently signed with the Yorele Trading Company, a company which, according to Latia, was famous for their business that handles the largest variety of products in the Empire. They even have an anonymous head, who had seen Celtron's efforts with the revival of the herbs and so offered him a contract for free. With that, and Celtron's determined to thank her with something, Latia clutches the paper of Seirin and informs her ally that she is indeed in need of something. One bright early morning, Susan informs Latia that a package from Celtron has arrived for her. Bursting with delight, Latia couldn't believe her apparent luck, as even she did not believe Celtron would find the potion for the Seirin paper since it was regulated by the Empire itself, but he managed to do so in a day. So it seems that the Yorele Trading Company's reputation truly lives up to its name. As Latia proceeds to coat the paper with Karshian's writing with the magic potion, she mindlessly starts talking to herself, particularly about how the Gruon Trading Company will now blossom back into business, now more so than ever since Celtron is trading with the Yorele Trading Company directly. This of course leads Susan to stare at her young lady, truly quite amazed by her and the fact that the world seems to be turning the way she wants it to. Latia reads her mind, and worrying that all the things she's been doing based on her previous life's knowledge seem strange, she decides to do something childish to counteract that. She calls Susan closer, feigning that she will tell her a secret, and just as a kid might say, Latia says that she is a guardian angel that always guides her actions by telling her what to do in her mind. The dazed Susan can only think how cute it is that Latia, despite her cleverness, is still so innocent. Nonetheless, the child feels a sense of relief that Susan has believed her. Well, technically she didn't lie. Latia thinks that her previous life, wherein she read the novel, and her life as Latia, where she got killed at an early age, are the guardian angels in her head guiding her. Suddenly, she hears a slight tweet from the window and finds the bird she's been searching for collapsed on the ground. Apparently, the bird is more than meets the eye. The bird is, in fact, a true guardian angel. Imagine that! and he is a messenger from heaven assigned to look after lost souls. He's even nicknamed as a forbidden soul. It had gone to Latia and had high hopes for her that she showed signs of potential for good, but the bird eventually left her be when she started bullying Karshian for no reason. But now that she's actively being good again, the bird checks on her from time to time. But unfortunately, the timing couldn't be more off, as when it hears Latia talking to Susan about a guardian angel, it faints, thinking his cover has been blown. Meanwhile, Latia notices him as being the same bird from before and even lovingly gives him a nickname, Tweety. As of right now, moments after waking up, Tweety finds himself facing a dilemma, with Latia apparently figuring out that he is her guardian angel. Fortunately enough, by the way she talks, Tweety deduces that although she knows of the existence of guardian angels, at least she doesn't know that he's one of them. Actually, Tweety, she doesn't even know that guardian angels are real. Anyway, as Latia continues talking to her favorite bird, it seems that she can read even its thoughts as well when it agrees to the name it was given. Even Latia seems surprised by the extent of her powers. In any case, it seems to have manifested during her new life, but she couldn't help but think that her powers could help her win big money in casinos and stuff like that. That evil grin doesn't suit you, Latia. But what seems peculiar is that the bird can also tell if Latia is having bad thoughts, and since she is, unfortunately, this makes Tweety faint again. Latia and Susan notice the bird's sudden collapse, and the clever child rightfully deduces that the bird's fever arises when she's having bad thoughts. Latia even puts it to the test. Latia then makes a decision to call in a favor to the Urele Trading Company and to Celtron in order to figure out Tweety's species. A little while later, Celtron arrives, but both he and Susan now gawk at how cute Tweety is with his new bow. From Celtron, of course. On his bow, however, lies a red jewel that Latia notices. When she asks Celtron about it, the cheeky tradesman doesn't expound upon it, but just says that it was something that'll help her in the future if she manages to take care and stay close to Tweety. Anyhow, with their business concluded, Latia asks that the pay for today's favor be taken out from her salary. As the advisor to the Gruon Trading Company, she's entitled to 10% of the total income generated by her ideas. But admittedly, that is like using a double-edged sword. Low profits from her ideas mean she goes penniless. Nonetheless, she and Celtron leave on very good terms, with her escorting her guest out herself. Unfortunately, she cannot take Tweety with her since she isn't allowed to have pets, so she just leaves him in her room and tells him to be quiet. To his credit, he does, until he notices Betty sneaking into Latia's room. He can do nothing but observe the maid go through her things, and she manages to find the magic potion and papers of Seirin. Oh boy, a recipe for trouble. Naturally, the moment Latia arrives back at the mansion, her mother, with Betty by her side, calls her back into her room at once. An entire ruckus ensues as Latia gets confronted by her mother. Susan is held back by the other maids. Meanwhile, Latia herself is pinned down until she's kneeling on her knees. The poor girl tries to ask her what's going on, but when Betty brings out the magic potion and hands it to her mother, she immediately figures it out for herself. Latia's mind starts frantically searching for the moment where she slipped up when she distinctly remembers hiding it properly before she left with Celtron. Her mother asks where she got such an expensive potion if by her defense she didn't steal it from her father's study. Regardless, she's caught in a trap. She can't just say that she's in cahoots with the head of the Gruon Trading Company, but she also can't give a proper explanation without it. To drive the nail into the coffin, Betty then proceeds to call the Marquise Gladelice, who of course was afraid that by sneaking into his study, Latia had seen the papers about the aristocrats. And so when he arrives, he admittedly strikes Latia in the face and disgraces her by essentially announcing her low birth. What's more, she proceeds to have Susan beaten up, and Latia is to be deprived of water until she confesses. These people, can you stop being despicable for just one moment? Their evilness is so hard to take. When the Marquis discovers that Latia had not indeed been in his study, he becomes all the more curious about how Latia managed to get the potion. Meanwhile, Latia is beside herself thinking about how Susan is being punished because of her, and she's being tormented by the fact now that her father doesn't even hesitate to announce her illegitimacy. Sadness was her only companion, that is, until Karshian appeared from out the window. Karshian visits her for the first time through the window. Latia thinks that it's because he wants to get the letter paper, but as she hands it out, Karshian brings out a piece of bread. Karshian doesn't know why they're exchanging gifts, but he heard that she was being punished, so he thought she'd be hungry and brought food. How thoughtful of him. Her cheeks turn red, realizing that Karshian is being kind to her for the first time. In return for his kindness, she hands out the letter paper, but he's not happy as she thought he would be. Karshian then opens up about her punishment for stealing the magic potion for the paper and apologizes for it. Latia's eyes widen in disbelief that Karshian apologized to her when she was bullying him the whole time. However, Latia comes to realize that she was being arrogant. Trusting her is the only open he has, and if he wanted his letter back, he would have no choice but to open up to her. Simply put, she was using his desperation to her advantage, so she has no right to take the bread. So she apologizes about it, but Karshian plainly resolves to throw it out if she doesn't want to eat it. With a gentle look and warming eyes, he tells her not to worry too much and just eat the bread so she won't be starving. This boy's kindness is just as perfect as he looks. Latia can't utter a single word for a moment, but then Tweety tells her to take it. She strongly promises to make him happy. Karshian just laughs, thinking that she's just being carried away by her emotions. But he's not totally wrong, because later on, when he's going to have a big fight with the princess who will become his wife, Latia will help him how to solve that fight. Shortly after, Latia tells him the truth about her punishment, but still, there's no way to prove her innocence. Karshian then places his hand on hers and assures her that everything's going to be fine. Latia recalls that in the novel, Karshian was described as a very empathetic boy. Right now, he's going through a hard time in the house Gladelice, but later on, he will turn into a kind and gentle man after meeting the female lead. He is warm to his lady, but merciless to his enemies. Suddenly, Karshian notices the ornament on Tweety's neck. Latia is startled when he claps his hand, saying that she owes him one for it. They've really grown closer to each other. How cute! He then leans over and whispers in her ear. Latia agrees to it, saying that it can work. Latia promises that she will repay him for as long as she lives. She then points her finger at Tweety, saying that it's a real lucky charm. Karshian genuinely smiles at her, seeing all cheered up. 3 days later, Latia's father sent her 1 glass of water to moisten her throat. He knew that everything in his study was in its place, yet he still made her starve for 3 days because of his pride. But thanks to the food that Karshian brought in secret, she escaped death from starvation. In other words, her father is just pretending to be so generous by giving her a glass of water. She then intentionally taps the glass as it wobbles before it shatters on the floor. Her servant yells at her, and with a disgusting look on her face, she rushes Latia to take a bath before meeting her father. Latia flinches to the cold water in the bath, but the servant just tells her to hurry because she's busy. Latia grits her teeth. On the day that everyone gets executed, she's going to be the only one alive. After that night, she comes to the Marquise's study, thinking that he will put her in charge of the illegal fight houses. However, the Marquise asks her about the head of the Gruon Trading Company instead. She knew that the Marquise would have heard the news, but the Gruon Trading Company is still weak and isn't doing much to catch people's attention. On the outside, they would merely seem like good friends, but the Marquise knows about the medicinal herbs with high efficacy. Their back garden is full of medicinal herbs, so the Marquise questions her loyalty to the House Gladelice. Latia knows that she needs to think about it carefully because she will be working under him soon. She won't be able to be deeply involved with his business right away, so she has nothing to give Celtron the business secrets yet. However, an idea comes to mind. If she helps to enhance the efficacy of medicinal herbs and save the time that is spent on the accounts, maybe she'll be able to dig up some information on his main business faster than she has been expecting to. As expected of her, she is suitable to be the Empire's advisor. And so she confirms that the medicinal herbs grow too easily. She then starts explaining that flowers tend to grow stronger in the wild rather than in a greenhouse. Even though Celtron is the descendant of the Druids, her claim is also true to some extent. So even if they don't have a green thumb like a Druid does, the herbs will turn out to be quite effective if they give enough time for it to mature. By the looks of it, her father is taking it to consideration, so she starts to put up the plan. She then further explains that Betty told her about the Gruon Trading Company's highest quality of herbs that is way better than what they have in the back garden, and that's the reason why she knows about some secrets for cultivating medicinal herbs from Celtron. She really knows how to make her enemy's life miserable, and we definitely love her for it. The oppressor must also be oppressed. Her father now thinks that Latia will be much more useful in the future, so he asks her to help him with his work. However, there is something that Latia wishes to have in return. Latia grits her teeth before answering. She wants Susan back. Shortly after, she finally reunites with Susan and embraces her like a mother she never had. She then tells Susan to go somewhere better if she wants to live instead of getting punished all the time because of her. However, Susan yells at her, saying that she should not say something like that ever again. Susan's eyes filled with tears as she reminisces how she fell in love with Latia the moment she held her in her arms. From that moment, Susan made up her mind. She may not be a skilled nanny, but she would show her what happiness was. Latia didn't know how Susan felt, so from now on, she promises not to talk like that again with the intent of living together happily because Susan is the only happiness in her life. The next day, her father praises her for how talented she is. If this was in her previous life, she would have been tricked once again by his touch. But this time, she won't. She knows better who really loves and trusts her. Shortly after, the Marquise prepared a feast in Latia's room. She can't believe how abruptly his attitude changed. Suddenly, Karshian comes through the window again and asks why there's so much food. Well, it's proof that their plan is going well and that they'll get more food like this in the future. Knowing that they're still young, Latia is determined to use the adults as a foothold for their growth. But in order to do that, she has to gain her father's trust first. Suddenly, she remembers seeing a fabricated account book before she traveled back in time. Just then, when she starts working in a study, she finds out that the person in charge of the accounts was manipulating the account books to fill his own pockets. In her previous life, her father was the one who discovered it, but in her current life, she will get all the credit for it. Her father smashes the table with his bare hand. He paid a fortune to hire that person, yet he's being played all along. Latia smirks, thinking that they'll be having another feast. However, that's not what she wants. Her real plan begins now. Later that day, the Marchioness, first-level manager, objects to the Marquise's decision of assigning Latia as the second-level manager. The Marquise won't hold his wife responsible this time for missing the errors. Latia deserves it. After all, it was a huge loss to their family's accounts. That morning, Susan happens to inform Latia about Elaine, who started studying math, though she has no gift in any subject at all. However, Latia knows that she shouldn't take Elaine lightly, still remembering that incident she caused in her past life. Suddenly, Karshian visits her room again, asking how peaceful it has been for the past few days. Latia is enraged because he has no idea how tired she is. Ever since she was appointed as the second-level manager, she has become so busy. She needs to work with her father every day and steals information for Celtron, all while keeping an eye out for her chance to have revenge. But in return for working so hard, she got permission to keep Tweety, which is not a bad reward at all. Also, there is a new medicinal herb that her father is planning to cultivate, and he told Celtron about it. Latia laughs like an evil stepsister while holding the letter from Celtron. She grins, indicating that Celtron agrees to their plan. Children are so scary. Then, news comes that the Marquise will hold a dinner party the next day with the head of the Gruon Trading Company. Latia clenches her fists. Finally, it's time to execute her revenge. The next day, Latia arrives at the dining hall with Tweety. Her father compliments her look. How can he compliment like that when he has no taste? And returns his attention to Celtron. Latia can tell that he's desperate to win his favor. He's trying to stop Celtron from finding evidence that he pocketed his medicinal herbs. But he's going to get caught in the end, so Latia just has to sit and enjoy the rest of the show. However, her stepsister backhandedly compliments her, saying that everything Latia wears, from the dresses to the jewelry and shoes, are all hers to begin with, and that old-fashioned styles suit her better. I wouldn't be arrested if I smacked this girl in the head, right? Because she seems to be losing it. If Latia was the same in her previous life, her low self-esteem would have made her feel so depressed to no end, but not anymore. Instead, she smiles and proudly flaunts her fair complexion that even gold, silver, or platinum suits her beauty, unlike her sister. Elaine is too surprised to say a word, and the dining hall's atmosphere is so tense. The Marquise breaks off the icy tension and asks Latia about the medicinal herb that she's holding. Perfect timing for such a perfect crime. Latia explains that she's working hard to find ways for the medicinal herbs to grow well, so she will give the plant as a gift to Betty. Betty flinches upon hearing her name. Latia innocently frames Betty, saying Betty had no ointment made from the fluffy herb since it was very rare, so she had nothing to spare for someone like Karshian. Her father looks at Celtron's reaction as Susan hands out the herb to Betty. She should not underestimate what a child can do. But there's still more for the show. Latia mentions that Betty should have told her she was short on money instead of taking accessories from her room every now and then. So in order to prevent that from happening again, Latia gave her the medicinal herb to get the money that she needs. Betty is totally frozen at this point. She's not the only one who can stab someone in the back with a smile on her face. Latia refuses to be the victim any longer, but Betty still insists that she's innocent and that Latia's imagination often runs wild since she has no friends. Latia then uses it against her. How come such a servant implies that the eldest daughter of House Gladelice has a victim complex in front of a guest? Betty's already in a tough situation, but her parents somehow side with the servant to prevent any circumstances that can ruin their family's reputation. So Latia has no choice but to pull her trump card, which is Tweety. She pressed the ornament, and in a flash, Tweety started talking. Everyone is in shock, just as what Latia expected, but it's too early for that. She then explains that the ornament is a magic tool that lets someone speak to all types of animals. Tweety testifies that Betty did go in Latia's room, and as soon as she saw the magic potion, she exclaimed that it belonged to the Marquise. That's strange, because how did she confidently say that it belonged to the Marquise as if she had been in his study before? The medicinal herb that Betty is holding shatters on the floor. The Marchioness quivers in anger, with the suspicion in mind that her husband is having an affair with a servant. He doesn't let her go near his study, yet a servant just comes in and out freely? Betty trembles in both anger and in fear as she points out that Tweety is just making things up. Tweety then dashes to her and continually pokes her skin with its beak and feet. Latia lets out a half-hearted laugh because she didn't think it would be more chaotic than she thought. The Marquis slams his hand on the table, strong enough to silence the room. He orders to rip the crappy collar off the bird, and better still, just smash it. However, pieces of paper slap his face from different directions, which makes him even more agitated than ever. LOL, he better be grateful that it's just a paper and not his wife's hand. Suddenly, the door opens and a woman in all black with purple eyes comes in, saying that he deserves it for speaking ill of her products. It turns out that she is the head of the Yarielig Aggregate Trading Company. She's such a beauty! Seltron stands from his seat, surprised at how Lady Ciel shows up at the dinner party. Latia is somehow confused. The novel said that she hardly ever reveals her identity because she's a magician and the master of the magic tower. Latia's plan was just simple. She was going to report Betty's theft in front of an outsider, hoping that rumors would spread, causing damage to House Gladelice's reputation. And if she was lucky, rumors may spread about her illegitimacy, which might allow her to escape. But in order to carry out that plan, she needed clear evidence, and that was what Karshian secretly told her about Tweety's collar, an animal language interpreter. So she prepared the collar's warranty to prove that Tweety's testimony was true. Yet the head of the Yarieli Trading Company appears, bringing thousands of warranties with her. Ciel acts sadly, seeing how her products are being treated so poorly. So as the head of the company, she needs to inspect every single product herself. Those eyes are just so hypnotizing, and she's really so pretty. She smirks and points out that the Marquise didn't know about the collar as one of their key products because he is more interested in copying the items of small and powerless trading companies. She dropped the bomb, everyone. Ciel is so cool. Now that he has seen enough warranties, Ciel is confident that he will admit that Tweety is telling the truth. The Marquise rushes over to his wife, trying to cover up the obvious, but Seltron intervenes, saying that maybe Betty saw it while running on an errand. The Marquise quickly catches up to cover his tracks, but Seltron suggests checking Betty's room right away to see if she really stole from Latia's room or not. The Marquise doesn't think that's necessary, but Ciel agrees with Seltron to give recognition to her products. In Betty's room, they find all the jewelry that Latia owns, and even a link proves that those are the ones she gave to her older stepsister. The Marquise turns to see Ciel and Seltron waiting for him to take action. He can't afford to tolerate a servant's behavior in front of the guests, so he orders the servants to give Betty a beating and kicks her out. Betty exclaimed in resistance, still holding on to his words that she's the only one he loves. She was about to say something like being House Gladelice's second in command, but Susan covers her mouth. This poor girl treats his words as if they're diamonds, but it's actually fake. Before the other servants drag her out, Latia winks and whispers that she should have made allies with the right people. The Marquise chases down his wife, so Latia invites them to her room. Ciel knows that Latia finds out about the secret of Seltron's family when he was still unaware of it, so she asks if Latia knows about her secret as well. Latia realizes that telling her that she knows very well about her identity won't do her any good as of the moment, so she responds just like a child does. She innocently plays her card well, that Ciel starts to be convinced as well, because if Latia knows her true identity, she would rather feel hostility than curiosity. In Seltron's case, she found out about his secret by comparing the book from the National Library with their family tree documents. Ciel glares at her, asking if it was just a coincidence, to which Latia confirms, since reading is her hobby. Latia then expresses her gratitude towards Ciel for helping her out, but since they haven't formed a partnership yet, she isn't obliged to answer her questions. And by partnership, she means it's only between Yarieli Trading Company and herself, not House Gladelice. Since she signed under the name of Tiana Amethyst in Celtron's company, it will not be hard to form partnership in CL's company as well. During the dinner party, Latia realizes that CL wants to dig up the atrocious conduct of the Gladelice Trading Company, so it will be better to hire her to get some information and proof inside their household. I swear, this kid could take down the whole empire in this state. Without hesitation, CL agrees to her proposal, saying that she will bring over a partnership agreement soon. And about her free voucher that comes along with the contract, Latia wants to know Tweety's identity. Oh no, Tweety's too shocked to speak. Poor little bird, all his efforts will go down the drain. But for Latia, there might be a reason why she can communicate with Tweety in her head. It's not like she has telepathic powers or something. Suddenly, Karshian comes through the window, but CL quickly recognizes him. Karshian hesitates at first, but he manages to recall CL, which makes her really happy. Latia then remembers a part in the novel about Karshian's childhood when his mother was still alive. The three of them would go on a picnic, and it was on one of those days that someone jumped into their carriage on their way home. And that was their first encounter with CL. A magician whom she loved and trusted not only stole her thesis, but also falsely accused her, so she got kicked out of the Imperial Palace. To make things worse, he was afraid the truth would be revealed, so he sent an assassin to kill CL. Who's in their right mind to hurt someone as pretty and talented as CL? Rather than dying at the hands of someone she loved, CL thought it was better to take her own life and jumped into the carriage. Karshian and his family took pity on CL, so they helped her out a bit. CL made up her mind to repay the kindness, but she failed to trace them down. And now, they finally meet again, in her room. With Karshian's mother passing away, and House Lomdesel falling into hardship and all, it would have been harder for her to find them. CL holds his hand, thanking his family's kindness that she was able to work her way up to becoming the master of the Magic Tower. She was hoping that he'd be living in happiness all this time, but no! With such a menacing aura, she asks who's been making his life miserable. Dun dun dun! Before anything escalates, Latia takes the initiative to explain how Karshian's father is related to her father. Apparently, the Count left Karshian under their care and set off on his trade route. However, things took a turn for the worse ever since her father changed his attitude when the people lost interest in Karshian. Upon hearing this, CL encourages him to go with her as a chance to repay Karshian's kindness, because honestly, he doesn't deserve to be in a place with his hands tied by Latia's father. But Karshian doesn't want to leave, explaining that he must wait for his father's return in the Marquess Gladelice's mansion. CL tries to argue about it, but Karshian is firm in his decision. Realizing that it's a bad decision, Latia strongly suggests that leaving their mansion is the right thing to do. She further presses that if the Count comes back seeing his child in a miserable state, he would surely be devastated as well. Also, she now realizes that even if she's protecting Karshian now, the Count may not forgive her what she did in the past. Suddenly, an idea comes to mind. Latia suggests using the paper she gave him last time to write a letter to his father, but Karshian doesn't want his father to get worried. Celtron suggests writing a hint that his son isn't invited to the banquet today, so he will notice that Karshian is not being treated well. He further directs him that the one they previously assisted will now extend their support in order to assure the Count as well. Latia is getting furious as to why Karshian still hesitates to leave, and so she asks him if there's another reason why he's faltering. Dropping his head to hide his face, he mumbles that the reason why he won't leave is because of her absence. I knew it! Our boy is now attached to our ever-so-cute Latia! CL now suspects that Karshian has feelings for Latia, and so she suggests stepping forward since Marquess Gladelice is after her company. So if word spreads that she visits the manor on a regular basis, people will take interest in House Gladelice again, and naturally, they will also be interested in Karshian. Latia thinks it's a brilliant idea, so her father won't dare mistreat him again. Karshian agrees to that idea, but he asks for another favor from CL, and that is to teach Latia in leading a trading company back to its feet. Given this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Latia humbly accepts CL as her tutor. As things settle, CL bids farewell and promises to come back with the partnership agreement and the result of Latia's request. That night, Karshian writes a letter to his father stating that Latia is terminally ill. He doesn't know what it is yet, but he's determined to find out. Latia is his savior, so he wants to save her in return. The last time I checked, she's perfectly fine. What is going on? A day later, as Karshian cleans the yard, he contemplates whether to send the letter or not. However, remembering Latia's words, he can't help but admit that she has changed for the better, comparing her to himself. And so with determination, he's inspired to change as well. I'm so proud of Latia for having this kind of influence towards others. Then he checks his surrounding to see if there's anyone nearby. As soon as he confirms that there's none, he summons a siren, the messenger of the wind and the sea, to send the letter to his father. A beaming smile etches on his face as soon as he hears that his father is doing well. It turns out that the sirens owe a great debt to his father for bringing peace to the ocean, and so this little request of his is nothing. Karshian feels proud and hopeful that indeed his father is out there achieving great things. Meanwhile, in the manor, Latia smirks at the sight of her mother's decision to leave her father, who is having an affair with another woman. After that, she goes to the hall only to see a preparation. Yesterday, Ciel made it clear that she would keep their partnership a secret, but she would definitely let people know that she'll be teaching Latia. While the servants prepare the table, she realizes that she needs to have as many means to protect herself as possible. So for the time being, she goes to the garden with Susan to check the fluffy herbs. Of course, it's not just an ordinary herb because she will use it to nail her goals. Suddenly, a drunkard yells out to her for touching the herbs. Latia confidently asserts her position as the lady of the house, pointing out the man's lack of discipline and respect. The man suddenly kneels down and sarcastically apologizes, asking if that's what she's expecting him to say. Who is this guy? How dare he talk to our lovely girl like that? Latia is rather surprised at how the man acted. His mention of Karshian catches her attention even more, as he reveals that Karshian failed to mention the extent of Latia's assertiveness. Turns out, this man is Karshian's teacher, Gilbert, a botanist and a vet, who prescribes the horse feed and supplements and gives it to Karshian. However, Latia is still bothered why he's not addressing her formally. She knows that he doesn't have any ill intentions. As for his reason, he claims to be faithful in studying plants. Since every single liquor out there started off as a plant, drinking is the best way to study plants. I don't know, but this guy is so funny, lol. Latia cuts him off as soon as he states why he got mad at first. She completely understands that medicinal herbs were sold before they were fully grown, so they weren't very effective. But this time she wants to do a proper job in growing it. Gilbert immediately realizes that Latia was the one who advised the Marquess about the plants, and so he did the honor of digging the plant in a good shape and handed it to Latia. Before leaving, Latia asks Gilbert to tell Karshian that breakfast is ready in his room so he can visit when he has the time. Meanwhile, inside, the servants gossip about how the Marquess hasn't come out of his room yet. He had a lot of liquor last night due to his wife's departure. Inside his room, as his head throbs in pain due to excessive drinking, he blames his wife for not supporting what he did, for not respecting him as her husband, and for always looking down on him just because she comes from a family of a duke. So he had no choice but to fall for Betty, their servant. Excuse me, sir? No woman wants her man to cheat. Sink that into your head. This time, he realizes the consequences of his actions that will lead him to become just as powerless as he was when he was a child. He can't let that happen again. Not after he did everything to work his way up. He can't have everything taken away from him, all while looking at a family picture focusing on Gilbert. What? Is Gilbert his older brother? Is that why Gilbert didn't formally address Latia because he's her uncle? Ugh, I can't wait to find out! In the stable, Karshian runs to Gilbert, who informs him that a picky little superior dropped by this morning. He's actually referring to Latia. As soon as Gilbert mentions Latia's name, Karshian's mood brightens up and angrily asks if he was being rude to her since he's rude to everybody. Gilbert isn't even apologetic about it since he was born that way. When Gilbert tells him about Latia's message, he keeps teasing Karshian about how he managed to make her prepare his breakfast. Gilbert knows very well that Karshian has now someone to depend on and that he's becoming more expressive. He can't help but be proud of him. Meanwhile, the butler knocks and informs the Marquess about Latia's concerns, so she requests for an audience. This time, the Marquess realizes that Latia was the one who set it all up. Latia notices that her father is late, so she tries to grab another cookie. Just then, the door slams open, revealing her angered father. However, Latia knew this was coming. Although Betty got kicked out, she knew that her mother would come back sooner or later. She might harass Latia even more for breaking the peace within the family, so she would need a shield to protect herself for now. And so, she greets her father with a beaming smile, offering the blade mint plant that she picked from the back garden. As soon as her father takes a bite of one leaf, his hangover is relieved. If this was the same blade mint plant before, he would have needed at least 5 to make him recover from his hangover. This just proves how effective the plant is. Also, this would have made her father realize that her advice was right. With a lying face, Latia claps and feeds her father's ego, even if she knows very well that it was all because of her ability to execute. At this point, the Marquess's suspicion subsides, thinking that Latia is just a child who's hungry for love, so she won't do something like that. As expected, her father will take her side for the time being, so she can rest easy even if her mother comes back. Moreover, she knows very well he's always dreamed of becoming independent from her mother's family, so she can use him as a shield and as a spear to cause family troubles. After that, she swears that she'll live an easy life for the time being, and then make sure that Karshian leaves with Claude when he returns 3 years later. That would also mean they need to part ways. As she enters her room, she's surprised to see Karshian smiling happily while eating his breakfast. She then asks him to stay for lunch and proposes that they should eat together every day from now on. Karshian mumbles something like he can see her now every day. Latia didn't hear it well, but Karshian just tells her that he likes the idea. Karshian is such a shy boy. He's even more adorable when he blushes. As they continue to talk over lunch, Latia finds out that Gilbert is indeed her uncle. Gilbert is an illegitimate child who had no interest in becoming the successor. Latia is so surprised. She never knew she had an uncle. Karshian bets that Elene has no idea. Upon hearing that name from his mouth, Latia goes silent for a moment. This is definitely jealousy. Back to the topic when her father became the Marquess. He agreed to let Gilbert stay at the manor on the condition that he'd work without being paid for the rest of his life. Gilbert had to agree because the moment he left, he would have been killed by her father. Latia's eyes widened at this revelation, but questions as to why her father took so many precautions with Gilbert now that he had been the successor. Latia blurts out how it bothers him, to which Karshian finds annoying. She suddenly stands to find Gilbert right away, but Karshian stops her. OMG, my babies are showing signs! Latia is shocked but manages to call out his name. Karshian flinches and lets go of her wrist. When asked why he got surprised when she decided to see Gilbert, Karshian walks out, his face all red from blushing. A few days later, her mother still didn't come back, so she helped her father with more work. Upon knowing what her father got from the auction, she thinks of an evil plan that will put her family into a disgraceful state. Also, she hasn't seen Karshian lately despite telling him to eat breakfast together. He can't even bring himself to face you right now. The mere thought of your face is enough to make him blush. A few days later, Ciel visits to start her lesson with Latia. Just then, the Marquess puts on a fake attitude towards Latia in order to show Ciel how much he loves his daughter. But Latia expected that he only agreed to it because Elene would take part in the lessons too. However, Ciel is only charmed by Latia's abilities, so she has no intention to teach anyone else. Also, Elene can't even add 2-digit numbers yet, while Latia can calculate 8-digit numbers in her head, and even 11-digit numbers if she uses an abacus. That's how smart our lovely girl is! Not only that, Ciel reminds him that he was humiliated when he didn't need to be. He only had chosen Latia to participate during the tea party. The tea party was held by the premier, and it was a chance to form connections with the imperial family. But Elene ruined that chance. Shortly after, the Marquess took Karshian under his care, but that was just so he could recover his reputation. If it weren't for Elene, Karshian could have lived happily under the care of someone else. Still, even if Elene participates in the lesson, she won't be able to keep up, so she proceeds to Latia's room with all the gifts she brought with her, saying that it's something that Latia will be needing soon. Hours later, Latia looks so satisfied with the learnings, despite being exhausted. Seeing her reaction, Ciel praises Karshian for having a good eye for girls. I totally agree. When asked what she'd like to focus on in the future, Latia eagerly responds that she's interested in civil and commercial law in particular, but all of it is interesting to her. Ciel didn't expect that kind of response. How can a 7-year-old say something like that? Sure, she's strange, but that's what makes Ciel want to foster her even more. Just then, Latia asks about her favor last time. Ciel suspects that there's a big difference between Tweety's intellectual level compared to the other species, so they came up with a different hypothesis. Tweety might be more than just a bird. Ciel explains that Tweety could be a divine animal or a mystical creature. She then hands one of the forbidden books from the Imperial Library that describes the characteristics of the angels. Angels connect gods and humans as messengers, and they look after humans as well. In particular, guardian angels train to become a god, in which they have to collect 4 talents that belong to children. Those talents are very powerful for making the world a better place. However, Ciel reminds her that she's not allowed to say it out loud that she knows she has a guardian angel. If she does, the angel has to start the long training process from scratch. Also, there cannot be any evil in the minds of the children. If the child has, the angel also suffers and has to leave without fostering the talent. This time, Latia suspects that in her previous life as Lady Latia, Tweety disappeared because her mind was being eaten away by evil. but things are still unclear to her. CL anticipates this reaction, so she takes out a recorder with the eyewitness accounts, who also claim to have seen such birds during their early stages in life. The first one is the honorary messenger in history who developed the paper of Seirin. The second one is called Saintess Helena, who mercilessly bestowed blessings on local and foreign travelers. But now the honorary messenger is currently in his 40s, and the saintess is in her 20s, so CL assumes that the angel leaves when Latia comes of age. Pondering about what her talent is that Tweety is after, she remembers that she can read minds, which makes sense that it's one of Tweety's 4 abilities that manifested to her. However, CL isn't sure of the order of the witnesses, but if the information she got is true, it means Tweety's first ability was manifested a century ago. That witness was the writer of the Forbidden Knowledge. It was a kind of prophecy, but the contents were so groundless that they were regarded as nonsense. The prophecy indicates that humans would be able to fly in the sky without magic, as well as shoot a star into space, and it even states that people would go to the moon. They were all so hard to believe, but the writer claims that he saw all of those things. As someone who came from a modern era, Latia figures out what the writer was referring to: an airplane, a satellite, and how people have been to the moon on a rocket. Simply put, the Forbidden Knowledge is a collection of stories about modern times. But to Latia, it means that there used to be someone like her before who reincarnated into this world, and that they share the same guardian angel. This means that Tweety has the abilities of Forbidden Knowledge, Messenger, and Blessing Travelers. Unfortunately, the author was accused of being a liar and was put to death by stoning, but Tweety waited for 60 years to foster the next talent. But who would have thought that Latia, a sub-role villain who was too busy harassing others and wasted her chance, had something so great behind her? This time, Latia is determined to develop her ability to stay alive and help Tweety become a god. She is so preoccupied that she didn't notice the gifts in front of her. Latia is so surprised by all the expensive things that CL prepares for her. Just then, she's reminded of the Imperial Auction, which is held every 5 years. It is an event where treasures of the Imperial Palace and other precious items are put up for bidding. What is special about it is that the items are announced in advance, so anyone can submit their bidding price before the auction is actually held. In the auction, the Crown Prince's fountain pen will be offered for the auction, but Latia knows very well that the connections that people wish to build aren't with the prince, but rather with Queen Ermena, who stands behind him. The Crown Prince is still young, so as the Emperor's favorite concubine, she is the most influential person right now. Of course, her father also submitted a check for the auction, but she plans on stabbing him in the back by erasing 10 on the digit he wrote. After that, she gave the bidding price to Celtron and asks for his help. Then her father will have all his connections taken away by Celtron. That's why CL brought a dress so Latia can find a fiancé. Apparently, parents bring their children along. Then they use the children to make promises of marriage or enter high society. Isn't that too cruel and controlling? Let them choose the kind of life they want. However, 5 years ago, her parents brought Elene, who was barely able to babble her words, to participate and successfully secured an engagement with Count Eplante's son, a member of Queen Ermena's family. What? They're literally babies. This is outrageous. So Latia isn't interested in participating because her father will take Eleni like he did last time. Also, she doesn't want her father to use her reputation to make more connections. But CL is persistent to use a false identity, so Latia can enter the auction with no problems. Latia agrees to the idea, and as soon as CL takes her leave, the Marquess knocks on the door and asks how the lesson was going. Latia has to make it sound so difficult, so the Marquess has no choice but to find another teacher for Elene. Now she can read her father's mind so well that she doesn't have to use telepathy. Suddenly, the Marquess mentions about the Imperial Auction, and this time, he'll be bringing Latia with him. This man really gets on my nerves. I can't wait how Latia will overthrow him for being so selfish and opportunistic. Her father is telling her that he's thinking of bringing her with him. Is he really suggesting this all of a sudden? What's with this sudden change of heart? But just when Latia's hopes are up, he drops the bombshell that due to a sudden rule at the party requiring children to have a partner of the opposite gender, and that partner must be an aristocrat, he's only taking Elene since Latia doesn't have anybody to go with. Ouch! He feigns sadness at the idea, but in Latia's mind, he's once again favoring Elene. Because of that, she suddenly craves attending the Imperial Auction. She clenches her fists and implores Susan to make her the most dazzling person there. All she needs now is to find an aristocrat. The following day, she seeks out Gilbert, who is still considered an aristocrat. She finds him once again, downing another bottle of liquor in broad daylight. She's about to reprimand him when she notices the head butler present. Worse, carrying a wounded Tigger. Who could be so cruel? Poor cat. It's a stark reminder of why she shivers every time she thinks of Elene. Before Latia's rebirth, Elene abused Tigger because it preferred the nanny over her, to the extent of ending its life. The nanny was horrified and left, spreading the tale. But their parents never reprimanded Elene. All they cared about was blaming Latia. Latia wants to speak up, but her mother manipulates her past self, insisting that such rumors would only distress Elene, especially since she had a fiancé. So Latia had no choice but to defend Elene as the older sister. Given another chance at life, Latia wants to protect Tigger this time. Gilbert informs her that he's already administered medicine, but it's futile without an operation. Yet Elene insists on leaving Tigger untreated, or else she'll end its life herself. Latia finds it shameful how two adults can't take action because of a little girl. But then again, her sister is quite the psycho. She turns to Gilbert, ordering him to treat Tigger because she will take care of the rest. Meanwhile, Elene luxuriates in her room, daydreaming about her fairy tale ending. In fairy tales, she notices that princesses have long hair, endure hardships, and communicate with animals. Apart from being able to talk to animals, she's almost like a princess in a fairy tale. Her hair is long enough, sure, but hardships? Seriously? Latia needs to hear this. Elene remembers how Tigger refused to communicate with her because it was angry with her. Can you blame it? As she ponders, she recalls the bird Latia is carrying. The wicked thought crosses her mind. She'll take it from Latia and ensure it never flies again, for good. Elene is exhilarated as she selects an outfit that complements the bird she plans to bring to the auction. Just imagining herself at the event with the bird perched on her shoulder, she envisions being surrounded by lords while young ladies gaze on with envy from afar, relishing being the center of attention. And the thought of her one and only fiancé, Lord Hendel, arriving and taking her hand, signaling the beginning of her life as a princess, fills her with excitement. Okay, time to wake up now, Elene. Hendel does not even want you near him. She surely thinks differently. Her reverie is interrupted by the news of Latia's arrival. Elene's eyes light up and she hurries to meet her. Latia can't help but notice the stark differences in treatment between herself and Elene. From their rooms, hers on the first floor, Elene's on the extravagant third floor, to the treatment by the maids, it's clear Latia is still viewed as the illegitimate child. But this time, she's not going to stand for it. This time, she's going to assert herself. Go, girl, not this time. Suddenly, an unusually excited Elene surprises Latia. She wonders why Elene is happy to see her because it's not like her at all. Elene even acknowledges the bird on Latia's shoulder. Latia senses something's up because Elene's excitement is unsettling. The bird senses the ominous energy emanating from Elene. They take their seats as per Latia's request, and it's then that Latia notices the room is a mess, not just Elene herself. This is the moment she decides to reveal something to Elene and everyone present. She informs them that since their mother won't be returning for a while, she has become the second manager of their trading company and will be assuming some of their mother's authority. To drive her point home, she looks at the maid behind Elene and promptly dismisses her on the spot, right in front of everyone. Elene and the maid are stunned, struggling to process what just happened. Latia fired her for failing to clean the room adequately for a guest's visit and neglecting basic responsibilities. Elene flinches in shock as she meets Latia's gaze, wondering if she's always this assertive. The maid begs for forgiveness with fear all over her face, but Latia just laughs, revealing that she is merely flexing her power. Her laughter shifts to a threatening tone as she warns the maid to be cautious if she wants to avoid ruining her life. At that moment, Elene realizes Latia has indeed changed. Though Latia actually wants to fire the maid for the way she was treated, for now, it's enough to make Elene feel a sense of urgency, even though household affairs mean little to her. Latia now has a pretext for exacting revenge for what they did to her in her previous life. She still vividly recalls the laughter and the sneers from all of them. It was the most miserable experience of her short previous life. Back in Latia's previous life, when she was 9 years old, she was ecstatic to receive her first invitation. But her joy was short-lived. While fretting over not having a dress to wear, Elene intervened, offering her own dress, claiming it came from a salon that never went out of style. Latia, clueless about high society, had no choice but to trust her sister. However, upon arriving at the party, She became the subject of ridicule when she realized Elene had given her a dress from a shop that had closed 2 months prior. Not only was she mocked for her outdated attire, but Elene also spread rumors that Latia had resisted her advice and despised the latest fashion trends everyone else was flaunting that night. Some people are just born evil, just innately evil in all aspects. Latia trembles as accusatory fingers point her way, forcing her to flee in shame. The humiliation she endured led to the development of social phobia, confining her indoors. Scandalous rumors painted her as a defective girl with no suitor due to her alleged mental illness, a villainess who mistreated vulnerable animals, and even as the perpetrator of bullying against Karshian. In the past, Latia blamed herself and hid away, but now she realizes she was just another one of Elene's targets. This time, however, she refuses to remain like her past self. Elene asks if Latia does not need Tweety the bird. Latia recognizes this as Elene's way of hinting at her desires, but Latia asserts her independence, refusing to be manipulated like before. She explains that Tweety is a cherished family member she intends to keep close to. Meanwhile, Elene is stunned by Latia's refusal. As she displays her dress for the auction, Latia does the same, informing her that the one their father procured for her is outdated, given her involvement in their father's trading business. She attempts to manipulate Elene, mirroring the tactics Elene once used on her. Elene is hesitant, but realizes she wore pink to the previous month's ball. Repeating the color might deter Lord Hendel's attention. I assure you that the reason he won't be looking won't be the dress. Latia offers her assistance, and Elene's joy overwhelms her. Before departing, Latia mentions Tigger. She slyly convinces Elene to relinquish the cat, insinuating she shares Elene's sentiments and can handle the situation as Elene desires. Elene grins, believing Latia is capable of actions akin to her own. Latia has everything planned out. She's determined to ensure Tigger reaches McPhee safely in this lifetime. Meanwhile, Elene rages, tearing at the dress her father gave her and directing her anger towards him. After departing, Latia's resolve to humiliate Elene intensifies, causing even Tweety to shiver in fear. In Tweety's mind, it's peculiar how a soul can emit such a color. Guardian angels like Tweety can discern not only children's talents but also their souls. Latia's soul shines vivid purple, indicative of a strong desire for existence, while Karshian's, due to maternal loss and paternal absence, exudes a blackish red hue, hungry for affection. Their souls reflect the colors of their most profound emotions. Conversely, Elene's soul radiates intense white, signifying her inhumanity. Unlike black souls, which absorb colors, white reflects all except itself, explaining her lack of moral compass. So that's why she doesn't seem to know the word empathy. She seriously is detached from herself. Moreover, Elene will receive no blessings as long as she lives, for Tigger is her guardian angel. Wait, what? The one she mistreated? Killing one's guardian angel is a grave offense, ensuring eternal wandering of the soul even after death. If Latia saves Tigger, Elene's punishment may be mitigated. However, after 2 attempts on Tigger's life, the angel will soon depart, leaving Elene's fate grim. A child forsaken by her guardian angel faces an unimaginable future. While Elene is grounded by her father over her outburst about the dress, Tigger receives successful treatment. McPhee joyfully wishes Tigger a happy life and thanks Latia for her bravery, inspired to confront the situation. McPhee plans to escape with Tigger from Elene. Latia praises McPhee's past nanny skills, confident her father will offer a glowing recommendation. Moved, McPhee hugs Latia and even jests about forging the recommendation letter if needed. The head butler apologizes to Latia for misjudgments, admitting his past indifference to the manor's happenings. After today, he now knows she doesn't deserve such a misunderstanding. He apologizes to Latia, who is now uncomfortable seeing an old man in tears. He's just too cute to not be forgiven, so he should do better from now on. Latia comprehends his predicament, recognizing his loyalty to her father. She accepts his apology, appreciating his sincerity. Suddenly, Gilbert proposes a drink to celebrate Tigger's recovery, but before he finishes his words, Latia requests a private conversation. They are seated with their drinks. Latia, who is jittery and serious, confronts Gilbert, questioning if he is her uncle. Gilbert is stunned and struggles to respond to such a question. Gilbert then smirks after being caught off guard for a second. Latia finds herself surprised at Gilbert's calm demeanor, contrasting her expectations. She had anticipated him to be flustered, but it's she who feels flustered by his smirk. Is it me or is this drunkard pretty handsome? LOL. Gilbert remains composed, even remarking that though Latia is aware of the truth, she still speaks condescendingly to him. Based on his aloof response, she wonders if Gilbert has forgiven her father and moved on from the past. Gilbert, dripping with sarcasm, questions why Latia would seek the company of an ex-Gladelice like him. Yet he's taken aback by her response. Latia wants Gilbert's help with erasing the traces of Gladelice associated with her name. Despite her father's trust, she yearns for independence like Gilbert's. Gilbert is astonished by her mature thinking at such a young age. She requests Gilbert to educate Karshian on noble etiquette, considering his aristocratic lineage, and surprisingly, he agrees. The next day, Ciel and Latia strategize on how Latia can attend the auction. With Karshian learning from an aristocrat, they could pass as a perfect couple. Ciel eagerly anticipates dressing Lord Karshian like a doll. Latia and Karshian have yet to meet after their previous encounter, which has left things awkward. Despite Latia's attempt to bridge the gap, Karshian seems cold and distant, leaving her worried about his response to her invitation to the auction. Meanwhile, Latia recalls Elene's dress predicament. Ciel reports a salon discontinuing due to poor quality, prompting Latia to suggest Uriel aggregate trading company for their revenge dress for Elene. Ciel plans a peculiar dress per Latia's request, knowing both her sister and her father won't be pleased. Their father, however, sees it as an opportunity to improve their family's image. In the stables, Karshian is reading and ponders why Latia hasn't been coming. Someone is missing someone. Though he wonders if he's been too cold, just the thought of her makes him blush. Latia surprises him with a visit, expressing concern about his eating habits. He reassures her he's eating well thanks to his newfound independence. As they discuss Gilbert's tutoring, Latia reluctantly reveals her desire to attend the auction, but the rules say she needs a fiancé, an aristocratic one. That particular word? He can't help but smile, and his blush says what a relief it is. This definitely sends butterflies into my stomach. Is this an indirect signal from her? I hope so. Latia is taken aback by Karshian's relief at her lack of a fiancé. His face flushes redder than a ripe apple, seemingly caught off guard by his own thoughts. To save face, he snaps back, questioning the relevance of having a fiancé for the auction to Gilbert teaching him. Determined, Latia grabs her dress, emphasizing her resolve to attend the party. She explains her plan to destroy her father, which Karshian approves of. She emphasizes the need for a partner not necessarily a fiancé or a lover, as long as they're of aristocratic lineage. Karshian is shocked and embarrassed, blushing and avoiding eye contact. Thinking he's upset, he hastily offers to be her fiancé, quickly correcting himself to partner when Latia looks confused. Poor Karshian, easily led up. As they join hands, Latia feels a strange sensation, pondering the unfamiliar feeling while Karshian simply accepts her proposal. These two could use some lessons in romance. 1 month later, it is finally the eve of the Imperial auction. Her father and Elene are on their way to the party. In Latia's mind, her father and Elene must be thinking that she would be sad to miss out on the party, but little did they know they'll be seeing each other there. And to make things better, the dress that Elene wore today was too ugly. Both of them have functioning eyes, so they would have felt that the dress was ugly too, but they weren't able to say anything because it came from the Yariel Trading Company. Furthermore, they're going together and yet they're still on bad terms. The slap is too personal. Meanwhile, Latia and Karshian prepare for the party, their first foray into high society. Elsewhere, Elene gleefully admires her new dress and shoes, her makeshift Tweety doll in hand. Her idea of the perfect princess. Watching his daughter talk to the doll, her father can't help but wonder why she seems to be getting stupider day by day. Whoa, what a way to say I love you to your favorite there, mister. He thinks she's getting worse about McPhee, who resigned out of nowhere. He even had to write her a recommendation letter, as well as pay her retirement benefits, indeed a great loss. He thinks there is still a way for him to make up for those losses. He just needs to get a hold of the fountain pen that will be put up for auction. With that pen, he will build connections with Queen Ermena, so he will be at the center of the political world. Day by day, he is also getting greedier. He's getting on my nerves the more he appears. Reality snaps him back as Elene continues her childish antics, a stark contrast to Latia's intelligence. He reconsiders bringing Elene instead of Latia. At the party, anticipation fills the air, especially for Lord Eplante, who is greatly admired for his sculptured features and friendship with the Crown Prince. As Lord Eplante enters, captivating the crowd, one beauty waits outside, ready to make her entrance. Latia. Gifts of rose quartz gemstone and other lavish items are presented to Hendel, but he finds them shallow. Despite this, he graciously thanks everyone and extends invitations to the banquet with his aunt, Queen Ermani, causing a commotion among the guests. Seeing these, he only thinks how disgusting and pathetic they all are. Later on, the arrival of Marquess Albus Gladelice and Lady Elene Gladelice was announced. In his mind, his filthy-tempered fiancée has arrived. He chuckles at the memory of Elene spilling tea on a lady who offered him a macaron, anticipating how she'll entertain him today. However, his amusement fades as he sees her approaching, dressed in a garish ensemble that could humble a color wheel. Hendel crumbles and can't help but cringe at the thought of this amusing-looking human being his fiancée. Please check on him. I think he had a stroke. Meanwhile, Elene basks in the attention, believing all eyes are on her. Well, she's not mistaken about that, but maybe for the wrong reason? Poor Elene. She's way too delusional to hear these whispers. Marquess Gladelice greets his future in-laws, but as soon as Count and Countess Eplante turn, they seem to have been struck by lightning in surprise. Elene shares how her father directly requested to the Urieli Aggregate Trading Company, which Marquess Gladelice proudly confirms, flaunting his connection with the said company. This causes a stir and whispers in the crowd, murmurs about why her father would choose a dress like that. No matter how bad his taste is, they think the dress is going way too far. What's worse is, Elene tells the Countess why she's wearing a dress from a salon that her father told her would be going out of business soon. I'm seriously confused whether Latia is a genius or Elene is just a little leaning on the stupider side. The Marquess is confused as to what she's talking about, while the Countess tells her that it doesn't make sense since Salon Almont makes dresses for the imperial family, with rumors that they are secretly backed by Crownick, the Emperor's trading company. Whispers about this could be the Marquess's revolting against His Majesty's taste. It would be treason and a declaration of war for trading companies of both sides. Hearing such things, the Marquess is trembling, causing him to bolt to Elene, who's spouting words he didn't say. Murmurs are surrounding, violently wounding the relationship of both families. Count Eplante calls the Marquess for a word. Meanwhile, Elene is confused as to why the atmosphere is quite strange today. She sure is different. Now, instead of anger, I can now feel other feelings toward this woman. Suddenly, an introduction of Gladelice extends to the arrival of Latia and Karshian. Before entering the room, Latia teases Karshian about being nervous. She glances at him and realizes why he is indeed the main lead. He looks quite dapper when he's dressed up. So charming. This face does not fit in the stable. Latia stops her daydreaming about the boy and just promises herself that once everything goes well, she will free Karshian from doing chores in the stable. After collecting themselves, they enter the den. Gasps of awe fill the venue as Latia makes her grand entrance to the Imperial Ball. Elene could feel the shock and confusion overcoming her. How did Latia even get to the palace in the first place? Everyone can't help but look at her as she walks down the aisle. Her beauty, her dress, her companions, everything about her is just too interesting. Even Hendel seems to have been entranced by her. But despite the crowd's interest in her, Latia feels nervous as ever. She's not used to being the belle of the ball, especially after all the trauma she experienced in her past life. As if sensing her doubts, Karshian bends over to Latia's ear, whispering that everything is going to be all right. Karshian is so dreamy for that. This makes her cheeks flush the reddest hue. But Karshian was right, so she heeds his advice and begins to interact with other girls with confidence. All of a sudden, a boy forcibly grabs Latia's wrist. He showers her with compliments and swoops in to kiss the top of her hand. But before he could do so, Karshian takes Latia's hand in his own. He compliments Latia too, not just about her beauty, but her intellect and hard work as well. Meanwhile, in a corner devoid from the noble crowd, Count Eplante threatens to withdraw Hendel's engagement with Elene, leaving Count Albus Gladelice to scramble in desperation and anger. But before he could fix the situation, Elene comes running in his direction, reporting that Latia has come to the ball. This shocks him, and immediately he and Elene confront Latia. Ciel intervenes between the three, admitting that she brought Latia and Karshian with her to the event. The tables are then turned against House Gladelice, when Ciel insinuates that it's almost as if Count Gladelice was playing favorites among his daughters. Aside from that, Ciel also points out why he never thought of bringing Karshian along. He once said that Karshian was like family to him, yet it never crossed his mind to bring Karshian to a social event as great as this one. Hearing Ciel's words, nobles realize that it's as if the Count was neglecting Karshian all this time. The room erupts in a frenzy of whispers, rumors, observations, and opinions about House Gladelice. Elene flushes red in shame. They should be complimenting her and insulting Latia, but everything is going the other way around. She's definitely gotten a taste of her own medicine now. In a fit of rage and shame, she yells at everyone to stop and runs away from the ball. Seeing Elene react that way, Latia cannot help but smirk. However, her smirk quickly dissipates when Hendel appears in front of her with a menacing gaze. He demands to know what could be so funny that Latia was smiling. Hendel's eyes pierce right through Latia as he fixates his intent gaze onto her tiny frame. When she doesn't answer, he hastily grabs her arm, causing Latia to squirm in pain. She would not tolerate his disrespect, regardless of his higher social status. She pulls her wrist, freeing herself from his grip. In a fit of anger for Latia's defiance, Hendel raises his hand, ready to strike her. The audacity of him! This is why Karshian is our best boy in this story! Luckily, Karshian quickly grabs Hendel's arm, stopping him from hurting Latia. He truly is a knight in shining armor. He squirms in pain as Karshian strengthens his grip. However, this only irritates Karshian more. If he hurts easily, then what makes him think he has a right to hurt others? He can't believe Hendel's audacity. Suddenly, Latia approaches Karshian, putting a hand on his shoulder. She reassures him that she's all right. Hearing this, he releases his grip on Hendel. But Hendel would not let this go easily. He remarks aloud that the two of them would not get away with this. Little does he know that Latia already has a card up her sleeve. Tears form in her eyes as she loudly remarks how much pain Hendel had inflicted on her and how scared she was that he was about to hit her. Hendel is at a loss for words. How did Latia play this situation to her favor? Well, of course, our female lead is the best. Witnessing everything, the nobles begin talking about Hendel's rude behavior. Whispers of his actions filled the room. Hendel can't help but panic at his now damaged reputation. He exclaims that everything is all a misunderstanding. Anger once again bubbles in the pit of his stomach, and he charges at Latia for causing all this. As he's about to grab her, a booming voice echoes throughout the ballroom. Count de Plante comes to intervene, and it just so happens that he isn't on his son's side. Count de Plante approaches them, and he formally apologizes for his son's behavior. He then shifts his attention to Hendel, staring daggers at his own son. Latia sure wasn't letting Hendel get away with this. A proud look displays on Karshian's face, and he strokes and pats her head in support. Shortly after, he leaves her with Ciel to look for some ointment for her hand. But Latia, however, remains plastered in her spot, blushing profusely at his gesture. Meanwhile, inside a room in the palace, Hendel sits in contempt. He had heard lots of rumors about Latia, but somehow, he can't help but remember how beautiful she looked during her entrance. But that isn't stopping him from plotting his revenge against her. Loud screams resonate in the palace room as Count de Plante urges Hendel to apologize to Latia and Karshian. Back at the ballroom, Karshian bandages up Latia's wrist, but as soon as he finishes, Albus calls out for Latia and heads straight to her. Getting straight to the point, he confronts her about the earlier ruckus. However, before he could probe further, Count de Plante interrupts them, claiming that there was something they needed to hear. A chill makes its way down Albus's spine. Is he withdrawing Hendel's engagement to Elene? House Gladelice will never recover if that happens. Jeez, is his reputation all he ever thinks about? His fears are pushed back when Hendel speaks. He utters out an apology to Latia, a forced one perhaps, but an apology nonetheless. As the whole scene unfolds, Albus can only think of one thing. He is definitely going to take advantage of this situation. However, before Albus could execute his entire guilt trip, Elene arrives, unseemingly confused at why her fiancé is bowing and apologizing to her sister. He urges Elene to remain quiet, knowing his plan would foil and his reputation would crumble if she dared speak. Disregarding her father's chiding, Elene causes a scene, evidently trying to win Hendel by pinning the blame on Latia. She screams and yells, drawing the attention of nobles by her indignant conduct. Oh, she's really showing her true colors now. Finally, another yell is heard. Hendel seems to have had enough of her. Hearing his words, a look of horror flashed in Elene's expressions. Is she really hearing him right? He's yelling about how much he hates her. He quickly runs out of the room with his father, Count de Plante, chasing after him. Later on, Latia bumps into someone. It seems to be Madame Ariane, the broker of black information. For her to be here at the ball means there must be a center of gossip. But what could it possibly be? Suddenly, everyone's attention is called. The Emperor and Queen have arrived. Emperor Leonardo Amalhalt and Queen Ermena Aplante Amalhalt truly are the jewels of the Empire. They look so regal and dashing. Immediately, the Emperor cuts to the chase, telling everyone he has special news. Upon his announcement, a group of people made their entrance behind him, and among the last to enter was someone who made Karshian tremble and shake in shock. He remains stiff and perplexed. His own father has graced the halls of the venue. It is none other than Claude Lomzadel. Seeing him, Latia too is stunned by his appearance. In fact, he isn't supposed to appear for another 3 years. A flashback to Claude's time at sea unfolds before us. It was a clear day and the sails of the ship were hoisted up, showing the flag of the pirates in view. Hector, the captain of the Trident Pirates, was alerted that the Clark pirate ship had made its way to the battlefront. Realizing that they plundered the ship before, he reminded his crew of the 4 oaths to become a Trident pirate, so they better stay alert and mindful. Claude interrupted him, chiding that he should go easy on the sailors. A smile made its way to Hector's face, and he sat next to him. Thanks to Claude, soon enough, he could finally quit being a pirate. He was once interested in meeting Hector, as he was known to be the demon of the sea. But when he found out that he was plundering ships to give food to the children, he knew then that redemption was possible. Hence, a proposal was made between them. Claude sighed mid-conversation. He shared that it's been a while since he received a letter from Karshian. Out of the blue, a siren appeared from the sky, bringing with her a letter to Claude. However, all traces of excitement from receiving the letter were quickly washed away from them. It looked like he was abused and maltreated from the contents of his letter. A sense of urgency erupted in the pit of their stomachs. There was no time to waste, especially now that Karshian needed them. They charted a course change, heading back to the Hypadium Empire immediately. Yes, please go back home and save him. He needs you now more than ever. Back in the present, Latia wonders why Claude's return is hastened. In the original novel, Claude didn't return so soon even after establishing the trade routes. He supposedly encountered a great storm along the way, delaying his return. Could it be that Karshian's letter altered the story's pace? He must have sent a letter, and Claude must have received it. He must have informed the Emperor of his immediate return after establishing the trade routes. No wonder Ariane, the dealer of information, is here. I love the hype and buildup of his return. In tears, Karshian looks at his father. His gaze is soft and emotional. Claude mouths at him with a smile that they would catch up later. Claude and his men, the Trident Pirates, present themselves to the Emperor, kneeling in his presence. Finally, Claude speaks up, announcing his official return to the Hypadium Empire. In a room silenced with shock at Claude's return, a joyful laugh is heard upon his announcement. The Emperor couldn't be more happy of his return and his fruitful gains along his journey. Establishing trade routes is an accomplishment of great feat for Claude, so the Emperor can't fathom why he would only want the amnesty of the pirates in return. An air of seriousness fills the room. Claude then reveals his plan of action for the Trident Pirates. Apparently, their skills rival even that of the Empire's own navy, which is why he is urging half of the pirates to take the entrance exam for the navy and half of them to start a trading company. That way, they'll be able to sustain themselves with a steady source of income. Among the crowd, Latia and Karshian rejoin each other. He comes to her in tears, celebrating his father's return. With a pat on the head, she expresses her joy for Karshian. He'll be going home soon now that his father is back. Her hand stops and stiffens midway, and suddenly she feels herself shaking. She has just realized the weight of her words. Karshian would be going home soon, which means the day of her family's execution would come sooner too. No, surely she'll escape her fate. A lump forms in her throat. It's almost as if all the air had been sucked out of her lungs. How could this happen? Nothing from the past is changing. Memories of her execution wash back fresh to her memory. She could feel the fear and trauma overcoming her once more. Suddenly, she is snapped back to reality by Karshian, who worries for her. How could he not be? All the color from her face is drained. She brushes off his worry, giving out an excuse that it's the pirate's presence that's giving her a fright. A blush makes its way to her face when she finds Karshian pulling her for an intimate embrace in the middle of the crowd. How genuine he truly is to comfort her and disregard the public eye. Meanwhile, Albus Gladelice is stuck in fear of what will happen to House Gladelice when Claude finally finds out that they've been abusing his son. The Emperor speaks once more, but what he says shocks everyone. Proudly and without question, he grants all 2 of Claude's requests. The pirates celebrate and the crowd joins them in cheer and praise. Unexpectedly, Queen Ermena chimes in the conversation. Since Claude established the first trade route of the sea, it seems fitting that he be rewarded, perhaps by being exempted from taxes from the first trade goods he brings in. An excellent idea, the Emperor concurs, but still, he has something up his sleeve. Aside from tax exemption, he awards Claude with the Order of Military Merit, granting him the status of a duke. Calmness is never one of Karshian's traits when put up against Latia's sudden plans. He can't understand why Latia is deciding to go back to House Gladelice all of a sudden. Hearing the commotion between the two, Ciel intervenes. She points out that leaving the palace now would be refusing the Emperor's grace. Latia takes Ciel's words into account, but that's also exactly why she has to go back. Her father and Elene would be in the palace all night, which means it would be the perfect time to gather all the evidence of her family's wrongdoings. Her expression softens into a warm gaze, reassuring Karshian that she would be all right. Ciel and Karshian can't help it. They never could hold her back for the things she had set her mind to. Before she leaves, they express their support for her, even offering to vouch for her absence. I love how they're always ready to support her. These people support her. The best she can do is repay their kindness. In another part of the palace, Albus is outraged by the announcement of Claude becoming a duke. Memories of their past resurface, and he recalls how it had always been since their childhood. It all began when Albus and Claude first met when they were 10 years old. From then on, his life had been a living realm of disappointment and frustration. Claude this, Claude that. His life had gone like that since meeting him. One day, when he was strolling across the estate, he overheard the maids gossiping. It turns out Ermena has had a crush on Claude for a long time. Even when she was already becoming the imperial concubine, she was still petty enough to cast a spell on Aisha, Claude's wife. Under the spell, Aisha's life slowly spiraled downwards. She had incurred debts, and her own health was fading. Out of love, Claude had stayed with her, paid off her debts, but still he could not save her from the doors of the afterlife. In the end, Claude had gone bankrupt trying to pay off Aisha's debts. When he left Karshian in Albus's care, he initially thought that would be the last he'd see Claude. But now Claude has returned as a hero. He needs to protect the Gladelice reputation no matter what. He writes a letter to his wife, Lacina, recounting his predicament of Claude's return and his plan of pinning their sins all on Latia. He would have Lacina wrap Latia around her little finger, and everything would go exactly as he plans. Our main lead isn't as weak as you think she is. Little does he know that Latia is racing back to the house to collect all evidence against them. In a rush, Latia makes her way out to her father's study, barely sparing time to fill Susan in on the happenings of late. Out of breath, she runs to the study, only to find out that it's locked. Suddenly, Tweety appears, offering to help her unlock the door with his magical abilities. But just when Tweety is about to work wonders, the butler blocks both of them from entering the study. The butler is firm and adamant that Latia may not be allowed to enter the study. He even blocks the entrance by guarding it, preventing her from sneaking in. What should Latia do? Should she tell him the truth about her father's misdeeds? Suddenly, Susan barges in, informing the butler that an imperial carriage has come. When he checks in on her report, she and Tweety immediately get on to business. Tweety manages to null the magic tool locking the study. In a hurry, they scurry inside before the butler comes back. Meanwhile, Lacina receives a letter her husband had sent her. Going through its contents, she realizes the gravity of their situation. This could mean the crumbling of their entire family, house, and wealth. Lacina falls for Albus's plans, and she too concludes that they can just put all the blame on Latia. An evil look displays on her face as she is determined to correct her family's standing. If she could just do exactly as her husband instructed, then they would be a happy family once more. Back at the study, Latia searches high and low to find the evidence, but she's had no luck so far. Suddenly, Susan's yells are heard, urging her to escape the study immediately. Oh no, Latia, get out of there quick! However, she has come this far already. She has to keep going. Where could her father have hidden the documents? A bright idea comes to mind. She decides to check from top to bottom this time. Perhaps this method would work better. Outside, the butler is furious. He calls out to bring the magician to unlock the study, but before they can handle matters, Lacina arrives. Inside the study, Latia successfully finds the documents she's been looking for. Proud of her feat, she quickly grabs hold of it, holding it up for Tweety to see. However, unbeknownst to her, Lacina stands behind her, ready to snatch the evidence away. As the documents are taken from her, a look of horror flashes on her face when she realizes who it is. Lacina doesn't hold back, and she slaps her so hard she falls to the ground. She rubs it in Latia's face that all her efforts were in vain. Nobody would believe a little girl like her. In the end, they would have her way, and she would suffer the blame of everything. But as quickly as she feels accomplished, her triumph is taken away from her when Claude arrives at the study. Thank heavens! The Lomsidel family truly are saviors! How grateful he is to Lacina for causing a spectacle. Her scandalous behavior and abuse would surely prove to be a catalyst for House Gladelice's quick capture. So guys, what do you think of this story so far? Please subscribe and turn on notifications for updates on this and all our other stories, so you can be the first to find out when they're out. Thank you so much for your support. See you in the next one!